all of us, we become experts at our own discipline, and we tend to teach the way that we were taught, and we teach the way that fits our discipline and our personal style. But that may not be the best way for students, and particularly as an EIL instructor, it doesn't do me any good to teach them like it's a linguistics class, because the majority of them will never take a linguistics class after they leave EIL. So I try to go to those seminars to learn more about how other faculty members think about teaching and learning at the university, and what I can do to help my students prepare for those different kinds of experiences. Prior to coming to BYU Hawaii, I worked for a large public university. And at a large public university, you don't get many opportunities to interact with faculty outside your field of study. And one thing that I've felt is an important part of the mission of BYU Hawaii is that we're all on the same team and we all work together in helping students reach university's goals for them. And I think we can't do that as isolated departments. We really need to do that by working together. And I think that faculty study group is a great opportunity for me to better understand what other faculty members do, and how my role, in particular as an EIL instructor, contributes to the overall university's goals. So it helps me to better understand what students experience in a science classroom or a psychology classroom or an accounting classroom, and then what I need to do to help them improve their language so they can be better prepared for that experience. Since I've been attending, it's also been helpful because it raises issues about education that we often don't get time to think about, let alone discuss. And Brother Wolfesberger and I, a couple years ago, held the seminar for new faculty members on English language instruction in the content area classrooms, so helping all faculty members support English language learners. And as part of that seminar, what we noticed is that the faculty members who participated needed time just to talk about teaching and learning, and their successes and their frustrations, and what ideas they could gain from other faculty members about how to solve some of the instructional situations they were encountering in their classroom. So even before we could get to talking about the linguistic aspects of teaching, they just needed to talk about all the other aspects of teaching, and there wasn't really a regular forum on campus for faculty members to do that. And I think this study group provides another one of those forums. And because it's interdisciplinary, I think it has more value than just a department meeting on their own. All of us tend to surround ourselves with people and things that confirm our own biases and worldviews. And by attending the seminar where we're surrounded by people from different fields, I think it helps us get a broader view of higher education and what works and what doesn't work. And we can take ideas from a business class and think, how might that approach work in my class where I teach humanities or something else? So I think it helps faculty members gain empathy for one another, and I think it helps build up this idea that we are all on the same team. We all work together towards the same goal, and let's learn from each other. I can remember maybe a couple months back now, one of our discussion topics was on reflection and not forcing students too quickly, giving time in the classroom for almost an instructional version of white space, essentially to allow students to think about a topic and not requiring an instant response. And that evolved also to a discussion about wait time when you ask questions, about giving students time to think about their responses before they respond. And there are certainly linguistic reasons to do that with our second language learners. They need more time to process and formulate a response, but even all students need, if we want them to get really good responses to questions, they need time to really think deeply about it and connect it to all that they've been learning. So that's something I tried to then apply in my classes, and it made me think, raise my awareness once again of wait time with questions. And so for that next week, I thought, every time I ask a question, I'm going to count to at least 15 seconds, which feels so long to a teacher I don't know how it feels long to the students, but it feels really long to a teacher. But I think that that encourages a greater variety of students to start participating in class. Because when you expect a response or you answer your own question, then you only hear from a minority of students who are very outgoing and are quick thinkers and probably are native speakers. But if you can give more time, then you invite a greater variety of voices to participate in the classroom. And 15 seconds is probably not long enough, but for a lot of us, that's the first step. And so that was a good influence of that seminar, is to help me think more about, am I giving students the time to process the concepts before I demand an answer from them? In the EIL classroom, it's actually hard to be a lecturer because so much of our experience as teachers, as trainee teachers, is to get students talking to one another and working together. And it's hard for me to expect that students are going to develop language skills if I don't give them an opportunity in class to practice those skills. And of course, a language instructor could say, well, I teach them the theory of language, and then I expect them to practice it on their own outside of class. But the challenge with that is, what happens to students when they try to apply it? They encounter problems. It's better if they can try applying the issue in the classroom and get some feedback and ask questions. When the questions come up outside of the classroom, students are usually not smart enough to write down the questions and bring it back to class and say, I tried to do this and this is the problem I had. Instead, they just don't do it. They just figure out it's impossible. So even though that's a language issue, that relates then to when I teach TESOL classes or linguistic classes. If I'm going to expect students to do a phonetic transcription like I did in my class today, I can't just teach them the symbols for the International Phonetic Alphabet and say, okay, now go to it, your homework is to transcribe this passage. We need to do those kind of practice experiences in the classroom so we can diagnose, where are you having problems? What aspect of this method is troubling for you? So I think, yes, presentation can be an important part of the classroom, especially if students have difficulties reading the material, then there might need to be some kind of formal presentation in the class. But I think classroom experiences can be more motivating for students if they can more actively participate by applying that learning to a problem or getting started on the homework assignment in the classroom and then completing it more independently on their own afterwards. In fact, this week, when it comes to learning the material, most university instructors were good students, and they could learn a lot independently on their own. And so reading textbooks was never probably hard for most of them. But the majority of our students, reading textbooks is really hard. Most students don't know how to read a textbook. They read it inefficiently. They think you read a textbook like you read a novel. You just start at the beginning and you go through, and that's not very effective, and that's when students usually don't pick up anything from a chapter. They could read everything and not know what was important and what wasn't. So with my linguistics class this semester, we spent the first day simulating how to read the textbook chapter. Chapter 1 was the homework, so let's talk about how to read it. And we did the preview, and we looked for, were there any questions at the beginning or the end that could guide our reading. We talked about what to do with bolded words or what to do with the diagrams. So I'm hoping that even though that is not a reading class, it's not a class to teach students how to read, but if as an instructor I'm not teaching them how to read, then who is going to teach them? The smart ones will get it on their own, they'll figure it out, but everybody else will be left behind and they'll never figure it out. So even though I'm a content area instructor, I think teaching things like reading skills and writing skills and speaking and listening skills is something every university instructor has to do. They do it implicitly, probably, or at least they know how to do it, but the majority of the students, in particular on our campus where we deal with lots of second language learners and non-traditional students, we need to make those language functions explicit to students. You know, if I'm going to require you to write a lab report, let's talk about how to write a lab report. What kind of sentences do I write? What kind of grammatical forms do I write? How do I organize it? And I know there are instructors on this campus who do this. I teach a class for EIL students. It's just a writing class. And in that class, I started talking to students about how do you learn the writing styles of your discipline. You know, go out and they interviewed faculty members and former students in their departments, and they create a little report so they figure out how to do writing. But one of the students said, oh, one of my instructors does that. We have biology labs, and he gives us example biology labs. He teaches us the headings, what kind of content goes in each section. And I think that's amazing, and I wish that could happen everywhere on campus. When we tell students, you have to write a business plan, do we show them examples of good business plans? Do we teach them what kind of grammatical structures? Do they address the reader, or is it more formal styles? I think the more we can do that as a campus, the more we can help students produce the kind of work that we can be proud of as instructors, that our students were able to produce. If we're struggling and students aren't producing what we want, it may be because we can't articulate what we want. And once we articulate what we want, then I think we can get better at helping students achieve it. So those are ideas that I'm trying to implement as I learn from these faculty groups and learn what different kinds of instructors do in different disciplines. Then how can I help my students be better prepared for those experiences?